of Pigs invasion was an unsuccessful attempt by the United States, backed Cuban exiles to overthrow the government of the Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. Increasing friction between the U.S. government and Castro's leftist regime led President Dwight D. Eisenhower to break off diplomatic relations with Cuba in January 1961. Even before that, however, the Central Intelligence Agency had been training anti-revolutionary Cuban exiles for a possible invasion of the island. The invasion plan was approved by Eisenhower's successor, John F. Kennedy. In 1959, after the Cuban Revolution led by Fidel Castro, a large Cuban exodus began as the new government allied itself with the Soviet Union and began to introduce communism. From 1960 to 1979, hundreds of thousands of Cubans left Cuba and began a new life in the United States. The outline plan, codenamed Operation Pluto, was organized by CIA Deputy Director for Plans Richard Melvin Bissell Jr. under CIA Director Allen Dulles. Dulles was confident that the CIA was capable of overthrowing the Cuban government, as led by Prime Minister Fidel Castro, since February 16, 1959. Dulles originally planned on the ship-borne invasion to originate from Trinidad, Cuba, and would make its way to Havana at the Escambray Mountains. Trinidad was closer to counter Castro forces. The plan was rejected, and the alternate plan, the Bay of Pigs plan, was approved by President John F. Kennedy on April 4, 1961, due to the fact that there would be fewer civilian casualties. On April 17, 1961, about 1,300 exiles armed with U.S. weapons landed at the Bahia de Cochinos, or the Bay of Pigs in Spanish, on the southern coast of Cuba, hoping to find support from the local population. They intended to cross the island to Havana. It was evident from the first hours of fighting, however, that the exiles were likely to lose. President Kennedy had the option of using the U.S. Air Force against the Cubans, but decided against it. Consequently, the invasion was stopped by Castro's army. By the time the fighting ended on April 19th, 90 exiles had been killed, and the rest had been taken as prisoners. The failure of the invasion seriously embarrassed the young Kennedy administration. Some critics blamed Kennedy for not giving it adequate support, and the others for allowing it to take place at all. The captured exiles were later ransomed by private groups in the U.S. Additionally, the invasion made Castro wary of the U.S. He was convinced that the Americans would try to take over the island again. From the Bay of Pigs, Castro had an increased fear of the U.S. incursion on Cuban soil.